Hello and welcome to a happy day for this episode of Sutton Impact Family Style. I'm Jason.
And I'm Bill, and we're ecstatic over the Steelers again beating the Bengals, especially with another Ben Roethlisberger come back in the fourth quarter and adding to his amazing record in the state of Ohio.
Yes indeed. Which also has a tie from this year, but we'll let that go right now.
Yes.
And I love
their seventh consecutive win over the Bengals.
And I love that Burfleck got bowled over by our boy Vance McDonald, who looks like he's been a steal for a 6th-round pick at this point.
He was 4th-round pick they got for him.
No, they got him for a 6th.
Oh, the announcers today said a 4. That's what I was wondering.
Unless it kicked in something later. No, they gave up a 5 for him, and then they got a 6. They got him in a 6th, but the 6th was the top of the round. The 5th was toward the end of the round. So either way, they got a great pick.
I'm pretty happy.
Yes.
And Antonio Brown had 100 yards receiving in the game-winning touchdown, so I know that he might start getting back to being sane again.
Hopefully. I don't think that's possible, though, because it seems like whenever you hear stories about him off the field, he's not everybody's favorite person. You know.
Yeah, and all the stuff with him throwing furniture out of the window in Miami, that's not a good story.
No, it's not. But I will say, for a game that was not... I mean, I had to watch most of the highlights because DirecTV didn't allow me to see the game today. But it seemed like it was less chippy than it could have been considering past Steelers-Bengals, you know? And nobody walked...
Perfect took a couple shots on Juju, but other than that, yeah.
Yeah. And then we saw Joe Mixon do the dance that Antonio Brown and Juju Smith do in that commercial when he scored his touchdown to go up, which was kind of funny.
Yep.
But overall, I mean, it was very tame for a Steelers-Bengals game.
Yeah. But good result.
A good result.
All right, I'll start us off with my sport business moment.
Okay.
This week's SBJ, the NBA is talking about what the season tickets going to look like in 2028.
Okay, that's a while away. What do we got?
And virtual reality ticket that the team could sell globally, which I've said that on our show before, and I always have said that once that becomes available, you can sit there. But Ted Leonsis now, who owns the Wizards, sees using virtual or augmented reality technology to let season ticket holders have their same seat for an away game that watch the TV show. Watch on TV.
Ooh, that's pretty neat.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get your same seat location no matter where you are. Now, I would think, what I would say is if you offered me the opportunity to buy a courtside seat virtually, I'd rather have a courtside seat.
Depending on how the technology is at that time, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess technically if you're the NBA, then you could sell a lot more tickets to the virtual reality game. Because you could sell that same seat to, 1,000 people. Or more than that, hopefully, if you're the NBA.
Sure.
But you just have to hope that obviously that, just like music and every other technology, it doesn't become something where you can either pay them money or you can just go online and get it for free. Which,
Well, I don't think you'll be able to go online and get it for free. I pretty much, understand how they will protect all that stuff. But I like the fact that they're thinking about, all these things that witness the TV viewing experience. And then, again, once they do that, then they're going to have to come up with something to enhance the in-person. Otherwise, everybody would just stay home for less money. So it's one of those things. It's going to open up a can of worms.
Now, as somebody that loves technology, obviously, in video games, I get that. But at the same time, my favorite time watching a game is watching games with you. And that's us socially interacting. And I guess on VR, there'll be ways to incorporate, the social interaction. But, I think there's still something to being there, beer, hot dog, friends hanging out together watching the game. Which, maybe we'll have all adapted. And we'll be fine living in a virtual world, like in Ready Player One or something. But it does seem like there's, there'll still be something to actually, being there with people. As we are technically.
I think that, just as fantasy has made people more involved with the games, that I definitely think this next round of gambling is going to do the same thing.
Yes, for sure.
People will be, gambling on, somebody hitting a triple-double or, 10 threes and all these interesting things you can gamble on, which I think will make it better for the viewer and the attendee.
Without a doubt. without a
Speaking
doubt.
of fantasy, who did you play for your quarterback today?
I
Phil
played.
Rivers?
No, I actually played Mahomes against the Patriots. I just.
Oh,
Well, I've lost. I'm 4-1 this year, and I've scored the most points in my league. And the 1 week I lost, I smartly played, Phillip Rivers over Mahomes, and Mahomes threw 6 touchdowns against the Steelers. So I feel like I've got to kind of just ride Mahomes. Although I did bench Rivers last week and I won, so I'm not very consistent. I just expect maybe I think tonight might be a shootout, and I think as all the talking heads on TV have also pointed out, like if Belichick looks at you as a legitimate contender for the throne in the AFC, you might get a very vanilla game plan against them today, where the Patriots are just because they're playing.
They know they're going to play against you. They're not going to show you what they're capable of doing.
Right. I mean, the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Bills are all terrible. Speaking of terrible, I was wondering today as I watched poor Nate Peterman. Did you see Nate Peterman play today, Dave?
No, but I know that when he came in the game, the Bills were winning, and they didn't score again after he came in the game.
And he threw a pick 6 for the win. And then on the next drive, he threw another pick that almost went for a back-to-back pick 6s, as he's been prone to do. I'm wondering.
So we were talking offline. I mean, Landry Jones is sitting out there.
Yeah.
Who trained behind Rossberg for 5 years. I would take Landry Jones over him, over Peterman for sure.
I think so. How do you
There's
think?
got to be other people out there that you would take over this guy. I mean, every time they give him an opportunity, they lose the game. I mean, and it's not even close. I mean, he gets in and it's like he can't perform.
No. And I was wondering, and this is sort of an odd thing, but you figure, how do you think? I mean, Nate Peterman, you're an NFL quarterback, which is incredibly rare. You're a professional athlete. You obviously make a pretty good living because even poor NFL players, at least for the time they're in the NFL, make pretty decent money. But how do you think it affects him in personal life? Like when people see Nate Peterman out, are they impressed by Nate Peterman? Because it's like he's still he's still 1,000 times better athlete and quarterback than they could ever be. But at the same time, he's Nate Peterman, and maybe they're like, well, when I could go with those 6 picks and a half, or 2 pick 6s to win the game. So, does it suck to be Nate?
One of Dallas's mediocre receivers just scored a touchdown.
Of course they did. Of course, but you know what I'm saying? If you're amazing enough to be a professional athlete, but at least in terms of the world and the talking heads, you're terrible at your job. Do people look down on you even though you're this amazing professional athlete? I don't know. It's a weird conundrum because it's a pretty cool place to be.
I think they'd look down to it. I think they look down to it because of how they judge you, how you do your job, and wins and losses and success. And if you're not successful, they don't think you're worth it. You shouldn't have a job.
Yeah, I was thinking like he's pretty young, so he probably doesn't have kids. But if he had kids in school, like, are they all like, your dad sucks? Brutal. Yeah, so it's like, it'd be just awful, right? People just trashing your dad.
Yeah.
But you're like, what's your dad do? He's a professional quarterback, and everybody's like, yeah, but he sucks.
Yeah, it'd be brutal.
It'd be brutal. His kids are fairly brutal, but it was a weird thing to think about.
Well, speaking of brutal, what about Jimmy Butler and the way he's handling his teammates in the Timberwolves?
On the surface, like if everything about the story is true, it's awesome. He calls Rachel Nichols to come in the day before, tells her how he feels about all these players. Then he shows up at practice, takes the third stringers, goes against, Cat, goes against Wiggins, goes against the rest of the starters, beats them, talks trash the entire time, yelling at the top of his lungs to the GM, you need me, you suck, all your players are soft, and then walks out of the gym and Andrew Wiggins daps him up. Like, it's pretty incredible, right?
Yeah, I've not seen anything quite like this before.
No, because, when you call Rachel Nichols to come in the night before, you're basically calling your shot. You're saying, I'm going to show up late at practice, I'm going to take the scrubs, I'm going to run these guys out of the gym. At one point, apparently, Karl Anthony Towns had the ball with Jimmy Butler on him on defense, and Butler was egging him to come on and, score on him, and then he just passed the ball out of the double team, or just passed the ball away, didn't even want to go against him. So I was wondering, was this one of those situations where, were they just rolling their eyes at Jimmy Butler when he was, going nonstop, or were they really trying and he was just kicking their ass?
Well, I heard there was a deal place with Miami, but at the 11th hour, Thibodeau decided he wanted more.
Yeah.
And then it pissed Riley off.
Yeah, so I heard he used some expletives in the exchange coming after that. Yeah. I mean, Wiggins obviously has been a huge disappointment. For whatever time, I think Jimmy Butler said he has the most God-given talent. I think you could argue that, whether or not he does or not. But, Towns is clearly this player that, analytics are like, he's 7 foot tall and he runs this fast and he can shoot threes. But he's never looked like a great player, He's had little games popping up here and there, but he's never looked like a dominating player. He's never looked like somebody you'd want to build your franchise around. He's never looked like Giannis, where he just seems like he just wants to destroy everybody. He looks, to quote Jimmy Butler, he looks pretty soft. And I think if he had any heart, wouldn't he just destroy it? Wouldn't he and, Wiggins be like, look, he's not coming in here running us out of the gym with the third stringers. After all the junk he talked about, where is the heart? Where is your, where are you showing you're not soft? Because I don't know.
Well, it's going to be a very, very uncomfortable opening week in Minnesota if he's still there.
Well, supposedly, according to the story I read on ESPN today, he is not only going to be there, but he's going to play opening night. This seems like a situation where you just you shouldn't have been greedy and just taking whatever Miami, the decent pick Miami offered you, which I heard was like Josh Richardson and a first, which is a lot for a guy that's a 30-year-old free agent, coming up. But I don't think you can bring him back into that locker room, right?
I don't think you can, and I just think it's a cancer now because obviously division's on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really bad situation right now.
I know all you've done is, on both sides, you just devalue Jimmy Butler's trade value. But if I'm Glenn Taylor, the owner, I'm telling Thibodeau, look, he's not coming in our gym again. You get the best deal you can get for him and you get him out of here. But do not let him near these players. Do not let him near his team. Do not let him near his building. Because he's just making us look bad every time he comes in here.
Yeah.
I know I heard also, and again, this is that, unnamed sources, that supposedly Thibodeau loved the entire thing and he thought it was great. And he told people behind closed doors, this is what this team needs, and he's very pro Jimmy Butler. So.
Well, your boy Noah got let go by the Knicks. Is Tibbs going to pick him up?
Supposedly Minnesota, whether that was Tibbs' decision or not, Minnesota has come out and said they are not looking to pick up Noah. And I love Noah, but Noah hasn't been able to play basketball for about 3 seasons now. I think he had those, that incredible run in Chicago where he just destroyed his body, with Tibbs as his coach, mind you. And the Minnesota situation a little bit reminds me of, Orlando these last couple of years. If you know you have young players on your team that need developed, you should be bringing in a coach that's known to do that. And the Magic would hire, Scott Skiles and these guys that are known for not liking young players. And it just it just seemed like you were stunning the growth. And, you're talking about Oladipo and Sabonis and these guys you had on your team that are gone now that are just, first team All-NBA kind of, and maybe if you had brought in the right coaches, in your incredibly poorly run organization, some things would have gone better for you. I don't know.
Well, NBA opening day is Wednesday.
Yes, it is.
So why don't we just, we haven't talked about this, but let's go ahead and pick our top 8 teams, 4 East, 4 West. Okay. And then later on in the year, maybe, we'll see how our 8 teams are doing, and then we'll see what we'll make our predictions for the finals.
Okay. I mean, as it stands now, I think the East is pretty easy, right?
Go ahead and make your East picks, and then I'll follow with mine, and I'll make the West picks first, and you can make the...
I think Boston might be the best team in basketball, not just the East. So I think Boston. Look at Toronto. They're replacing DeRozan with, Kawhi Leonard, who seems motivated and ready to ball. And they were the number 1 seed last year. I think you still have Philly. And I like Milwaukee. I like Coach Bud with, Giannis in some order, those 4. With Boston clearly the number 1 team.
Okay, I've got Boston clearly number 1.
Yes.
I've got Philadelphia as my 2. I've got Milwaukee with my 3. I think I've got Toronto with 4, but I'm not sold on Toronto.
No, Toronto's going to be interesting because it's really going to be, I mean, how Kawhi decides he wants, to get in there.
But we agree on the 4.
Yeah.
Then in the West, of course, I've got Golden State and Houston. Those are easy.
Yes.
And then it gets a little interesting.
If they were healthy, I'd put Oklahoma City as a strong. I'd probably put Oklahoma City as my 2, but Roberson is out for a lot longer than we think, and Russ is coming back. He can be late for another knee injury, so that sort of kicks them down a little bit for me.
They're either going to be my 4 or my 5. I'm probably going to make Portland my 3 just default, just because there's really nobody else.
Oh.
I think San Antonio is not going to be all that this year. I think this is going to be a year. I assume San Antonio will still make the playoffs just because.
Well, you just lost. Murray went down with the ACL, and they lost another one of their players too. So.
But I think they're probably going to be a 7 or an 8. They're not going to be that strong. So I'm going to go Golden State, Houston, Portland, and I want to say Oklahoma City. I just don't know if I can.
Well, I have a couple different teams.
I'm going to go Utah, then Oklahoma City. I'm going to go Utah 4, Oklahoma City 5.
I was like, Utah's got to be in the top 5, top 4 out west. And then I'm debating between the surprisingly underrated Denver Nuggets, who have a really nice little team they keep putting together, and Jamal Murray just keeps getting better and better with they're a nice team. And then we haven't mentioned them yet, but I think the Lakers are going to be good.
I think the Lakers are going to be improved. I don't think they're going to be good. I think this is still a year. There's going to be a lot of adjustments. It takes a lot for people to learn how to play with LeBron. There wasn't that much talent there that was established to begin with. Everybody's focusing on 19-20 rather than 18-19. So it'll be interesting. I mean, do I think they'll make the playoffs? They can make the playoffs. They could be an 8 or a 7. I don't think they'd be beyond that.
I think the Lakers are going to win over 50 games, and I think they're going to be a 5 or a 6 seed.
So you can pick the Lakers to win 50 plus games.
Oh yeah, I think they were good. They won almost 40 last year, and because I think Hart is good. I think Kuzma's good. I love Ingram. I think Lonzo Ball is a really good player when he's used properly. I think he and LeBron playing together is going to be and Rondo, the basketball IQ of those 3 passing wise is going to be phenomenal. I mean, obviously they have a big hole in the middle. They don't really have any bigs other than JaVale McGee, which is a huge thing. But in the regular season, when people aren't trying to there's not really many teams that can, until DeMarcus Cousins gets healthy, and obviously
so they in your top 4 or not?
They're creeping.
They're creeping.
They're probably 5. I wanted to put New Orleans in there just because I think Anthony Davis is going to be a monster, but I just don't know. I think there's Utah, the Lakers, New Orleans, and Denver are all very intriguing. In Oklahoma City, depending on the health of those 2 guys, are all really intriguing teams.
And I'm going to say I think New Orleans takes a step backwards because I don't think Anthony Davis is going to be happy. And I think they're going to miss Boogie Cousins. And they really haven't put anything in there to replace him.
Well, they have Mirotic, who came over last year, looked pretty good. And then they added Julius Randle, former Laker, to sort of take the Boogie minutes.
But none of them are Boogie.
No, but I mean, I know the Stephen A. Smiths of the world and some of the other, like Jalen Rose and sort of those basketball insiders, they're all pumping pretty hard the, Anthony Davis does not want to be in New Orleans narrative. Now, whether that plays out in any sort of way this year, I have no idea. If you're in New Orleans, you're a tough spot. 'Cause if you trade him away, you're not going to get value,
No. If you trade him away, you better be prepared to move that team.
Right. And it's like, he's the one draw. If as much as they love the Saints here, like the second that team gets bad, tickets are going to be really easy to get. I mean, it's a team that might be moving regardless, but it's tough,
All right, so who's going to get? Who do you think is the worst team in the NBA? Give me an East and a West that you think will be contending for the number 1 pick.
Oh, I think the Atlanta Hawks are going to be terrible. They're a really bad team. And as much as I guess I'll give you 2 in the East. And unfortunately, the other one would be the Magic. just because like I like their players, but all of their good young talent all plays the exact same position. They all have a lot of those, 4 or 5s, which, and outside of Evan Fournier, I don't know anybody on the team that can actually shoot a basketball from, more than 15 feet away. And that's not great. And Detroit, I think, would be pretty terrible, too. So that's 3 East teams. In the West, it's tough.
All right, about your West.
I'm hoping the Mavs are a little bit more fun, than they were last year. I think the Clippers are going to suck, too.
In Sacramento.
And Sacramento. But if I'm Sacramento, I'm in that good, I feel, obviously if, certain players come up for them, they could be pretty good. But it looks like a repeat of the teams that were picking high last year for the most part. Outside of the Celtics who, keep getting high picks from other teams on really bad trades.
Well, I don't see anybody but the Celtics coming out of the East. I just don't see. I see that as impossible.
Because the Celtics feel like they could lose any one of their top 4, and they're still the best team in the East.
And I don't disagree.
And you'll be able to stagger minutes because you still have Marcus Smart. You still have Scary Terry. I mean, you've just got a really nice team. I mean, the only thing that could derail the Celtics, obviously, is that you have this logjam of players. And, are those guys going to be happy, playing 27 minutes a game instead of 35 minutes a game? Especially guys like Scary Terry and some other guys that when they get in there, are they going to stay with the Brad system, or are they really going to be trying to show off and be like, look at me, I'm a free agent next year?
Do you think Houston gets past Golden State?
No.
Neither do I, but I do think the Celtics will take down Golden State.
There is a rumor, obviously, speaking back to where we started our NBA conversation with Jimmy Butler, that the Rockets are in on the Jimmy Butler trade. Because if you got Jimmy Butler, Chris Paul, and James Harden, that's a little bit, that's different. And obviously I'm leaving out Carmelo because I think everybody can leave out Carmelo at this point. But they would be intriguing, except the talk is they would lose Eric Gordon and one of their other players. I forget who it is. Or like a 2022 pick or something. But I think a motivated, angry Jimmy Butler on that team might be the kind of spark they need. And obviously the Warriors, the big wild card is, does DeMarcus Cousins come back before the playoffs and get integrated? And then if he does, just give them this whole other element on offense that other teams, where you can go small, big whenever you want and just destroy people offensively.
Well, let's talk, since this is the divisional finals in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, I think Houston's going to beat Boston.
I do too.
I like Houston's pitching, but I like Houston's camaraderie. I like the way they play together. I like their personalities. I like the way they hit.
Yeah.
I like Houston. And, the Dodgers have spent a lot of money, but I think the Brewers made some really prudent investments. So, my head tells me to pick the Dodgers.
Well, I'm sure Major League Baseball wants the Dodgers as well.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that their goal is I'm sure they want a Boston-LA series. I'm sure they don't want Houston-Milwaukee. Even if those are the two best teams. I don't think if you're, with football, hockey, and basketball.
I'm going to pick Houston and the Dodgers to be in the World Series. I'm going to pick Houston to win. I'm going to pick Houston to repeat.
I think Houston, they're, it pains me to watch Garrett Cole just destroy people. With the Pirates, obviously, but, they just.
Pitching right now, bet he's dominant.
Yeah, they've got their pitching is phenomenal. Altuve, they're just a really good team.
Yeah, Correa's hurting. And, he's still, we'll see what he does.
Yeah. No, they look really, really good. Yeah. So you've got to have a couple.
Now, we can talk about college football.
Oh yeah, we forgot about college football.
So Tua got hurt for Alabama yesterday, but I don't think it's a major injury.
No.
I don't see anybody beating Alabama
Well, you're forgetting about a team really close to you where I went to grad school that could easily beat Alabama.
Oh, I do think UCF is going to go undefeated.
Again.
I mean, they should have lost yesterday, but they didn't. So that tells me that's a wake-up call. They won't be as cocky, but I think they're going to go undefeated. I think they're going to go and they're going to be in a New Year's Day bowl, but they're not going to be playing in the BCS.
No, because the BCS.
They're just not going to get the respect. Their schedule's just not going to give them the respect to play to get the votes.
Well, they're in that tough position where whenever they get somebody on their schedule, like last year they destroy them, an SEC team, you know. They beat 2 SEC teams last year and didn't get the respect. So I mean, I don't know what they can do, you know, other than join another conference, because, you know, they're just not allowed. They're not going to be allowed to play with it. But they just don't want them because it ruins the whole system.
The guys that make the rules, and they're not one of the teams that makes the rules.
No,
it's a shame.
It is.
But I don't see them losing. I mean, a USF could be undefeated when they play, and they'll beat USF. USF has, you know, pulled a number of games out of their butt this year in the fourth quarter. Cincinnati's still undefeated, I believe. So it's 3 undefeated teams just in that conference.
Yes.
But, you know, if I'm picking right now, I'm going to pick Alabama. I'm going to pick Ohio State. I'm going to pick Notre Dame just because their schedule don't have anybody left.
Yeah, they got a pretty nice
so
schedule.
1, 2, 3, and then pick them. You know what? If it stays as mixed up as it is, maybe it is UCF.
Maybe.
Could be.
Yeah, Notre Dame and UCF are the two teams that, like, Alabama could lose and they'd still get in somehow. They could probably lose twice and they would still get in because.
But Georgia losing yesterday was big.
Yeah.
West Virginia losing knocks. That means the Big 12 doesn't have a team that doesn't have a defeat.
No, I know.
Even though Texas will probably move up and be like, they were 9 going in this week. They'll probably be 5 or 6 with all the dropouts. So we'll see. Interesting.
Yeah. Indeed.
Got a book recommendation.
Ooh, cool. What do you got?
The Lady in the Window.
The Lady in the Window.
The Lady in the Window.
Okay.
When Mom told me about it, I thought it was going to be more like, you know, what's the Rear Window?
Oh, the Hitchcock?
The Alfred Hitchcock thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not. It's really. It's got a really good plot. It's got a really good character development and some really good twists.
Okay, that's exciting.
I really enjoyed it.
Nice.
The Lady in the Window. I pretty much read the whole thing yesterday on my. You know, I read half of it on my flight to Pittsburgh and half of it on my way back. It was really good.
That is nice. That's good to hear. I always got to get book recommendations. Well, you've been traveling. Any good food in your?
Well, food, yeah. I've got, you know, I went to Fiore's in Pittsburgh. Always, you know, we talk about it all the time.
Of course.
I got a couple slices while I was there, and I brought hoagies back for dinner last night, and flying hoagies 1,000 miles and reheating them. They were still awesome. I mean, Fiore's just one of those places that's just outstanding.
It really is.
And then while I was there, I went to Permane Brothers, and I had a double meat hot sausage sandwich on Friday night. And that's, you know, Permane Brothers is Permane Brothers.
Yeah. It's a Pittsburgh tradition.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's gourmet food, it's bird food.
Yeah, but it's good at it, you know? It does what it does.
Yeah, it's real good. Where was I at the beginning of the week? I was in Phoenix, I went to Blanco and had fajitas. Blanco is off the hook, great Mexican food in Phoenix. But that's really the only good meal I had in Phoenix.
Okay. Well,
Do you have anything good this week?
I do have some good things. I rewatched a John Carpenter classic film, They Live, which they actually just wrote about on The Ringer again. You've seen They Live before, right?
Yeah.
What's weird is, like, you know, at the time he thought it was like a cool action sci-fi movie. In 2014, an article came out talking about it was more of a documentary. And watching it today, I mean, it's not a flawless film by any stretch. I mean, it stars Rowdy Roddy Piper from the WWE, and he was cast because he's supposed to be this sort of, he's supposed to kind of be sort of this dumb everyman, which he pulls off quite well. But that way, so it's like when everything sort of comes to fruition, he sort of sees, it's sort of the everyman of the world finally seeing the world for what it is. So it kind of worked in that way. But there's also this bizarre, I think it's like a 19-minute fight scene in the movie.
Okay.
So the movie is almost broken up with a WWE match. But the film itself, I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's incredibly apt today. The Ringer actually just wrote an article about it right after I had watched it randomly, talking about how the film is just, when you look at politics in the world we live in today, it's amazing how close this film, like I said, Carpenter called it a documentary like 4 years ago. So...
Well, I am planning on seeing Halloween next week.
That I would like to see. Yes.
I am planning on seeing that because I think it's going to be. I think from what I've read, I love the original story, so I'm wanting to see how this goes.
Exactly. And I also watched Sorry to Bother You with Lakeith Stanfield. You see the trailer for that one?
No.
It's another one sort of about, you have a guy that's just desperate for work. He's working at a telemarketing firm, and it's a little bit about, sort of selling out in corporate America, but it's done with just a very unique style. It gets weird. I'll just throw that out there. Armie Hammer is phenomenal in it. It's probably not for everybody, but it's pretty cool. And then I also watched the Netflix original, The Apostle, which...
Oh, how was that?
Have you ever seen 1973's brilliant Wicker Man?
Yes.
It's a very similar story to The Wicker Man, except it's done a lot darker and a lot grosser, I guess I would say. It's certainly worth watching, but it's not like... It's sort of that same, here's this sort of weird religious cult that revolves around crops and things along those lines, and then, here's an outsider on his way in. I mean, they change up some elements of it, but he's even mentioned that he was a big Wicker Man fan, so it definitely has a lot of that to it without sort of the bizarre musical charm of the Wicker Man, the original anyway. I sort of like I love that movie, the original, so not the awful Nicolas Cage remake that made no sense. But the original is quite good. You should watch it.
Well, I take it back. I haven't seen the original Wicker Man. I've only seen Nicolas Cage Wicker Man.
Oh, yeah. The original from 1973 is amazing. I highly recommend everybody watch it. It's really, really good. But that was pretty much it this week. I did start, and I did watch one episode of The Haunting of Hill House, the Netflix TV show.
Okay, yeah, what do you think?
I want to keep watching. I'll say that. I mean, it's obviously built. It's going to be a slow burn, obviously. So we're just sort of, the first episode is obviously, meeting the players and getting the stages and slowly learning, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
But I did like it. Hopefully next week I'll have watched, depending on how this week goes work-wise, I'll have some more to talk about next week with that show. But that's pretty much it for now. And I guess that's probably... What's that?
Anything we're looking forward to this week? Yeah, I'm looking for, like you said, I'll probably watch the baseball playoffs tonight. I'll watch the Patriots at Kansas City tonight. I'm looking forward to that.
I'm kind of excited for that game as well. I mean...
Dallas is shredding Jacksonville 17-0.
It's just, Jacksonville's a very weird team.
This is a very weird team, and you know what? They are not moving the ball at all.
No, Blake Bortles is a pretty terrible quarterback.
Yeah, he looks like 2016 Blake Bortles today.
And again, just from a consistency standpoint, like I know off the air I sort of trashed him, as I always do when I talk about him, but as we spoke about, Landry Jones is like what's he, about 29, 30 years old?
Landry Jones is probably 28 or 29, yeah.
28 or 29. He's been in the NFL. He's got like 7 or 8 starts. And again, he's competent. He's not going to wow you, but on a team with,
he'll manage the game better than Blake Bortles will.
Exactly. I mean, he is the ultimate, in the least offensive way, game manager. But he could definitely be doing a lot better than Blake Bortles.
Well, I'll tell you what. If Buffalo doesn't pick up another quarterback this week,
Especially because Josh Allen, I mean, he had to leave the game with an elbow injury, and he looked very
And he could
depressed.
be out for a while.
Yeah, he looked very depressed on the sideline, like something popped or something. You know, maybe it'll turn out to be nothing. He'll get a massage and a shot, and he'll be fine. But yeah, Nate Peterman, for his own sake, his own ego, and so he doesn't, you know, I honestly feel a little bit bad for him
He
at this
does
point.
not look good.
No,
He does not look good.
he looks terrible. And again, every shot he's had to play, he's looked worse and worse. I mean, today, as that game was falling apart when he came in, as someone who doesn't even know him, was just like, please don't let him throw a pick six because he doesn't need to throw yet another pick, you know? And he of course threw a pick six, and that's the game. And then on the next possession, he throws what was almost a set back-to-back pick sixes. Like, he might be the worst quarterback I guess I've ever watched, as far as that kind of stuff, you know?
I just think, you know, things are going so bad. I just don't think he can right himself.
No.
I think he's done. I think he's done as an NFL quarterback. I think if you put him on another team, he'd just be waiting for a bad thing to happen.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe you can go to like a sports psychologist and they can fix him. I don't know. But yeah, like you said, he's just real bad. Real bad. And I don't know, you know, I don't know what you do with that. Yeah, that's about it for this week.
Well, my highlight for eating this week is we're having a pig roast from Holy Hog for the football game on Saturday night.
Oh, nice.
That'll be good.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, so until next week, for episode 87 next week, keep listening, tell your friends, all that good stuff, and I guess we'll talk to you then.